Women Fighting. Oh, got it. Okay. Hello and welcome to the ResearchHERS Women Fighting Cancer of Los Angeles, the 2021 Speaker Series. My name is Kelsey Davis. I am the American Cancer Society staff lead for the Los Angeles ResearchHERS campaign. This is a three-part speaker series titled Conversations in and Out of the Lab, and today's focus is on breast cancer. Today, you'll get a chance to hear from women leading cutting-edge breast cancer research in Los Angeles. To kick off our program today, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to our virtual MC, NBC4 investigative reporter, Lolita Lopez. Lolita reports on the NBC4 News Daily, reporting at 11 a.m., 4, 5, and 6, and 11 p.m. But before I turn it over to Lolita and share a little bit about her, I also wanted to do some housekeeping rules before we get started. We ask that everyone please remain muted to avoid any background noise. We encourage you to change your view to speaker view, and which can be found at the top right-hand corner of your screen. We will also be using the chat button during our Q&A portion, and feel free to use the reaction button to show your support throughout the program. We will begin shortly with a brief video about ResearchHERS.
I read about a program that looks for women, scientists, cancer research. And I thought, this is me, I need to be a part of this.
Cancer research is very personal to me. I've lost my mother to cancer. It was just 2 weeks after my mother's passing, and I attended the first ResearchHERS event. The event showed me that sisterhood and unity among women.
ResearchHERS is a movement because of the importance of community, having those friendships between people who are so passionate about cancer and who are so inspiring.
We all have a common bond as women, and we support one another. One of the biggest challenges is just obtaining research funds in order to conduct our research.
Funding is the vital part of our careers as academic scientists.
In my research, I've worked with refugee and immigrant populations and trying to get them to get screened for breast and cervical cancer. I think it's important to reach underserved populations, and so the money that is raised by ResearchHERS is so important to help us to continue to do this work.
We are going to raise money that will help save lives. I'm so excited to raise the funds and help support the next breakthrough in cancer with you.
To my younger generation, I want to say we are all gifted with talents and skills and knowledge and experiences. So take what you know and make the change that you want to see.
We shouldn't give up, and we are not allowed really to give up.
We're all bringing so many new things to the table, and accumulation of all these new things is where the answer to cancer lies. That's where we'll find our cure.
Even when we're apart.
We are in this together.
And together, we'll find a cure.
Many thanks for being a part of the ResearchHERS Sisterhood.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned before, my name is Kelsey Davis, and I'm the American Cancer Society staff lead for the Los Angeles ResearchHERS campaign. Thank you for joining us in our three-part series titled Conversations in and Out of the Lab. Today's focus is on breast cancer research. You'll get a chance to hear from women leading cutting-edge breast cancer research in Los Angeles. It is my pleasure to introduce you all to our virtual MC today, NBC4 investigative reporter Lolita Lopez. Lolita reports on the NBC4 News Daily, reporting at 11, 4, 5, 6, and 11 p.m. A journalist for more than 20 years, Lopez feels privileged to tell people's stories and honored to meet many inspiring people along the way. As a breast cancer survivor herself, she has shared her own challenges during treatment and recovery, with a series of stories on her courageous fight against the disease as a working mother and wife. Lolita also co-MCs the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk in LA every year. We are so thrilled to have her joining us today. Welcome, Lolita.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. I am currently, you can't see behind me because I have this amazing background, but I'm in my basement and I'm happy for the background because it's a little messy today, but I would rather be no place else. I am so excited for the women you are about to meet. And as the introduction video showed, you know, women make such a difference in cancer research, but are way too underrepresented. And ResearcHERS and this campaign is really trying to change that and make a difference, and you can be a part of it. So we'll tell you more about that coming up. You know, while ResearcHERS raises funds and awareness for a variety of different cancers, today, like Kelsey said, we are going to be focused on breast cancer. We are just a few days away from October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But for me, I feel like every month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It is personal, as Kelsey told you. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013. I was doing a self-breast exam on my couch watching TV, and that's how I found it. And I was lucky enough to catch it early, but I still had to go through surgery and chemotherapy. And in that process, learned a lot about myself. I had the privilege of being treated at Huntington Hospital with a group of powerhouse women who basically told me, you are the captain of this team. I'm a sports person, so I think in sports analogies. And they said, whatever you need, we're going to figure out a way. And that was one of the most impactful things because, you know, I couldn't control that I got cancer, but I could control how I lived and worked through that journey. So I worked through cancer. I was able to make the decisions about my treatment and my surgeries in the way that I knew would best fit me. And I'm here 8 years later as an amazing survivor and a fighter, and tell my story all the time because I know what it's like to not talk about it in certain circles, and how culturally it can sometimes be something very taboo. And, you know, I used to say, I'm going to make cancer be like cake. We can say cake all the time. We can say cancer, we can talk about it. And really in that way, find ways to not only deal with it, but a cure, because I know that the research that these women are doing that you're about to meet today is going to be a part of it. So snap fingers. We're going to do spirit fingers today. You can snap, you can put some love in the chat, please, when I introduce the folks coming up. So why don't we get right to it? First of all, we couldn't be here without some amazing sponsors. So I want to give a shout out to Culver City Honda. They are our silver sponsor. Thank you, Culver City Honda, and Cedars-Sinai. Thank you so much for being the gold sponsor of this year's campaign. Your dedication to our mission, to the mission of funding women in research, is just out of sight, and we could not be anywhere without that kind of support. So again, let's just go through what we're doing here. These are called Conversations in and Out of the Lab. This is the second of a 3-part speaker series. And these events are an opportunity to hear from the women leading cutting-edge cancer research right here in our own backyard in Los Angeles County. Big things are happening, and you're going to hear from the women who are making it happen. Today, we have the privilege of listening to and talking with 3 women, 3 cancer researchers from Cedars-Sinai and USC Norris. And at the end of our program, we're going to share the date for our 3rd speaker series. Okay, but first, we have to start with an inspiration, right? We have to get inspired to get through not just today, but every day. And I am so happy to have a wonderful speaker today. Her name is Rebecca Dabb. She is our survivor speaker. She is an 11-year breast cancer survivor, and she recently joined the American Cancer Society as a staff member. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us and telling us and sharing a bit about your journey. Here's Rebecca.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all for letting me share my story with you all today. Like she said, not only am I a breast cancer survivor, I have the unique privilege of coming full circle from cancer patient to being a staff member, and I am so proud to be here. For me, my cancer journey began when I found a small lump in my left breast the day after my baby boy turned 9 years old. And it was on May 20th, 2010, at the age of 34, that I was diagnosed with HER2-positive breast cancer. I remember when I received the call from my doctor and how mine wasn't the typical response. I didn't have tears. I didn't have any questions, really. My life was changing in that moment, and my mind went completely blank. It wasn't until we had all the information that I really grasped the significance of my diagnosis. I initially had this naive assumption that because I was young, I didn't have a family history, that I was going to get through it. But we all know that cancer doesn't play fair. We found out that I was HER2 positive, and a lot of things changed. I would have to do chemotherapy and a year of Herceptin, a drug I had never heard of. But when my doctor told me I was HER2 positive, I remember being so terrified because I had read online about how devastating a HER2 diagnosis could be then. All I remember thinking of was my 2 kids, my babies, and what their life would be like without me in it. But the thing I remember most from that meeting was him taking my hand as we were leaving and telling me how thankful he was. He had a treatment plan for me. He pointed to a picture on his bookshelf that was taken 5 years earlier of a small group with a young mother in the middle who at that time had the same diagnosis as mine. He said he didn't have Herceptin when he treated that young mother, and she had unfortunately passed a year after it was taken. He tightened his squeeze on my hand and he told me that Herceptin was a game changer and I would not meet that same fate. Now, telling my kids I had cancer was pretty horrible, as was the treatment, the 12 surgeries, and worst of all, dealing with the fears and trauma that go along with this diagnosis. But I am thankfully here 11 years later. I'm an 11-year HER2 breast cancer survivor, not because I fought harder than others, because I know many women who fought just as hard and sadly passed from this disease. And not because I had a stronger and younger body, because I know of others just as strong and young, like that beautiful mother in the picture, that this horrible disease ravaged and took away from their families. I truly believe I'm an 11-year survivor because researchers like those here today helped develop a drug that targeted my specific cancer and gave me time with my family, a gift that is beyond measure. There's so much more to be developed, so many more game changers to be discovered, and every researcher needs a seat at the table to make it possible. Women belong in cancer research, and cancer research needs women. Thank you all for the wonderful work you do, and thank you for letting me share my story.
Rebecca. Oh my gosh. So much, it's so amazing because I feel like I'm connected to Rebecca, even though literally we met just minutes ago. My daughter was 9 years old. She's now a senior in high school. When I was diagnosed in 2013, she was 9 years old. Also the same thing. And, they had found something that was going to help me, a new procedure. And we did, we're going to do this differently, was what my doctor said. We're going to try the chemo first and then go backwards. And I'm like, I didn't read that. That's not what I know. I don't know what you're talking about. And, I trusted in them. I trusted in their research. One of my doctors was also researching things as well as being a doctor, which you'll hear from someone today as well. And I just knew that I was in good hands, but it was because of all of the things that had been happening. And since my diagnosis, I know 2 young ladies. One was a captain with me of our Harvard volleyball team when I was in school, and another one who have had cancer since me, and they have benefited from new treatments, even in the 8 years since I had mine. So, Rebecca, you resonate so much. All right, well, thank you so much. And now we can go to the women who are making this happen. This is where I get really excited. Can you tell? I just think that what these women are doing and what so many women are doing just is not just inspiring, but they are changing our lives. So first of all, thank you. But here they are on your screen. We're going to meet them shortly. Dr. Reva Beisho, she's the co-director of Women's Cancer Research Program and a breast medical oncologist at Cedars-Sinai. We have Dr. Madina Kuwait, co-program leader of the Cancer Biology Program at Cedars-Sinai and previously an ACS-funded researcher. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Stacy Finley, Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering at USC and a member of USC Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center. She is currently an ACS-funded researcher. Now, you can find out more about them and their bios, of course, on the ResearchHERS website. You'll hear more a little bit about them. But if you run a deep dive, the way I like to do in my investigative stories, you can go ahead and check out more about them there. We're going to learn a little bit about not just their research, but how it sort of interweaves into the work that they do every day. We're going to have questions that I'll be asking the panelists, but we also want to hear from you, from the folks that are listening. So if you have something that you want to ask, make sure you put it in the chat box. We have Kelsey who is monitoring the chat. And at the end of this, we will be able to bring some of your questions in from the audience a little later. So we are all spotlighted here. How's everyone doing today? Good. No one's like, they're like, yay, who sleeps first? So I'm going to start with, one of the basics. I just want to know what you do. So for all of the panelists, and we'll start with Dr. Basho, then Dr. Madina Kuwait, then Dr. Finley in that order. Can you just give us an overview of the type of breast cancer research that you do?
Sure. So I guess I'm starting. First of all, Lolita and Rebecca, thank you for sharing your touching stories. It's just so inspirational to start out with stories that amazing. So I am an assistant professor and the co-director of Women's Cancer Research Program at Cedars-Sinai. I am a clinical trialist as well as a oncologist. My focus is in breast cancer. So I conduct clinical trials evaluating new treatments with the goal of improving outcomes for women with breast cancer, as well as decreasing their side effects from treatment. My specific interests are in HER2 positive disease that has spread to the brain, as well as triple negative breast cancer. As you heard, alongside my research and clinical activities, I'm also the co-director of the Women's Cancer Research Program, through which we aim to build institutional, multidisciplinary, collaborative research efforts that are designed to really shift outcomes in breast cancer and other women's cancers. And so I can't underscore how much I understand the need for funding and support for female researchers in this space. So thank you for putting this event together.
That's amazing. Thank you for being here and for talking more about what you do. Dr. Madina Kuwait, tell us a little bit about your research.
Sure, and I'm in agreement with Dr. Basho. It's a real honor to be here amongst these researchers and amongst you survivors. It really hits the message home for me and for all of us. So I'm a professor of biomedical sciences at Cedars-Sinai. I also co-direct the PhD program at Cedars in biomedical and translational research. And I've been involved in a couple of startups in the past. I've developed a biodegradable molecular missile that can encapsulate therapeutic cargo or imaging agents. And I've designed these to be able to systemically target tumor cells. And some of the most exciting data that we've generated recently is that we found that this bioparticle, I call it a bioparticle because it's a biologic particle. It can cross the blood-brain barrier, which is a big barrier for many types of targeted therapies that are used in the clinic right now, and enter into brain metastatic tumors. And so I've been developing these to eventually get into the clinic. I hope one of these days I can use this in Dr. Basho's clinical trials. And we've been focused on triple negative breast cancer as well as HER2 positive breast cancer, but especially those tumors that metastasize to the brain and have very little other recourse other than chemotherapy that can cause, that can affect many different types of tissues. But there's very little available for targeted therapies. So we hope to really be able to break through that barrier.
Amazing, amazing. Dr. Finley, please let us know what you're working on.
Yes, thanks so much for this opportunity. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be sharing the same stage with you, Lolita, and with Dr. Basho and Dr. Madina Kuwait. I just wanted to echo what they said about just having the opportunity to share a little bit about our research with supporters and survivors, patient advocates. It means a lot. So I'm an associate professor of biomedical engineering at the University of Southern California. I'm also a faculty member in the Department of Quantitative and Computational Biology. So maybe from that statement, maybe can guess a little bit about what kind of work I do. I come from I bring a different perspective, I would say, than Dr. Basho and Dr. Madina Kuwait. And I think actually the order in which we're speaking is very nice, right? Clinical trials, more biological research, and then mine is more basic science research from the engineering perspective. I love numbers. I'm fascinated with numbers. And so my work is trying to build mathematical models that represent tumors so that we can do experiments with a computer. And so I try to better understand what's happening inside of tumor cells, also what's happening between tumor cells and other cells in the microenvironment that the tumor is growing in the tissue. And we use equations, mathematical equations, to represent what's happening inside of the body so that we can change a parameter or turn off a reaction or try to reproduce some experiments that our collaborators are doing in order to better understand what's driving the tumor. And specifically, we're excited about one type of process that's happening inside of the tumor, which is called angiogenesis. So the formation of new blood vessels. And if we can better understand signaling that's happening that drives the formation of new blood vessels, that's a very normal, natural process. All of our tissues in the body need blood vessels. The tumor exploits that in order to get its own blood supply, in order to get nutrients. And so we're trying to understand the signaling that happens inside of cells that causes that to happen so that we can help and connect with experimental researchers to try to develop strategies for cutting off the tumor's blood supply. So everything that I do is literally inside the computer, and excited to tell you more about it.
I'm excited to hear about it because, you don't think of it in my journalist brain that's full of words. It's like, how did you do this with numbers? Like, it is unbelievable. But I do love, you bring up a really good point. There is such a great synergy between all of the different research, and they really could work hand in hand if there was ability and funding behind every one of these things to then connect each other. And there's such a connectivity in that. And I love that you really expressed that. Dr. Basho, am I saying that right? Basho, is that right?
It's Basho.
Basho, I'm gonna get that right. Okay, Dr. Basho, can you share a little bit about the most exciting advances happening in breast cancer research, in your opinion, at this moment?
Sure. That is like one of the hardest questions because I can't tell you how much excitement I could go on and on about. We just had just last week one of our big cancer meetings, and every time one of these meetings take place, we always walk out of it just amazed with the data that comes out, and you just have to step back and think about just some of the advancements that we've made, and it's really phenomenal to think about how far we continue to come through cancer research. So I would say some of the most exciting things happening now in breast cancer research is that our treatments have become over time so successful that I think we're able to really ask the question, what can we not do in this case? What is it that we used to do that we can avoid doing because we're so good at what we do? And I think that's really an amazing place to be. And some of those ways are we can minimize the amount of surgery, or we can avoid radiation. But more pertinent to what I do, a lot of times we can skip the chemotherapy, or we can replace the chemotherapy with something targeted, or we have now immune therapy options available for our breast cancer patients, which we didn't have for a very long time. But immune therapy is, a type of treatment that harnesses the body's own immune system to fight cancer. And by doing this, we create the ultimate form of personalized cancer therapy because we're really using a person's own immune system to treat their own cancer, and to be able to use that in lieu of other toxic treatments is really an amazing and exciting place to be. And we see that we've made such advances in each of the subtypes of breast cancer. We're asking these questions in ER positive breast cancer, HER2 positive breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer. In each of these areas, we've really made strides that allow us to back off on our traditional treatments and push more some of these targeted and novel options.
Yeah, and I know that we've been talking about our journey. Rebecca and I talked about our journey as patients, and there are folks here who are listening in that respect. But there are also so many young women and young, men as well who are part of this as well. But young women who want to know more about how you came to getting to your research. So I want to go to Dr. Madina Kuwait. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into cancer research and where you are today?
Sure. Well, it is not what you would expect. So anybody who thinks that you have to be born of a family of scientists with a pedigree, I can tell you, it can happen to people who don't have that. So I actually come from a family of artists, believe it or not. And but this is kind of funny, the connection now, because when I grew up, I just loved repurposing everyday items into miniatures. I would take toothpaste, tube caps, and beads and buttons and make little miniature lamps and dresser drawers out of matchboxes and stuff like that. I just loved that. And, you know, I completely forgot about that until recently, until I realized, dang, I'm in the nano field now. I miniaturize everything these days. So it's kind of funny how it's come full circle. But, you know, what's funny about that is it's still true. Today, what I do, I am now a trained molecular biologist, more of a molecular engineer. I piece together pieces of genes that I borrow depending on the functions that they serve. And I've created designer proteins, I guess you could say, by piecing these together and producing these new types of proteins that have these new functions. And so I've borrowed a part of these functions from viruses because they're so good at penetrating things into cells and delivering cargo into cells. So it's an evolved mechanism that we're simply leveraging and exploiting. And then the other part that I'm borrowing is just naturally occurring proteins that occur in the body that happen to be proteins that tumors love. And so what we've created is a Trojan horse in the true sense of the word. We've enveloped these into drugs. They look like naturally occurring proteins. The tumors love it. They take it up, but surprise, it's got, you know, all of these goodies inside. And so, you know, I can attest that, you know, if you've got a creative mind, you like to think out of the box, if you're an artist or an engineer, this field needs you. And I'm hoping that I can be able to, you know, leverage these for breast cancer research as well.
I love that. I love the fact that like you can, you know, be in love with one thing and use the same brain power, the same sort of creative mind to like really, because if you're not thinking outside the box, right? Like, you know, I joke all the time, we wouldn't have the phones that we have and the tablets that we use if someone wasn't thinking outside the box, right? So I love that's where it comes from, because it really does come from a creative mind. It's for those people that keep telling you no, or we haven't done it that way before. You're like, yes, we can do this. I can do this. Dr. Finley, your journey for me kind of is the same. I mean, you could have done anything with all that math and those numbers in your head. Why choose this route?
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate what Dr. Madina Kuwait said about welcoming engineers into cancer research, right? Engineering is a discipline that is meant to solve problems. And right, it can be mechanical problems, electrical problems, computer science problems. And my background is a chemical engineer. So I was mostly interested in how do I, you know, do a separation to break down toxic compounds. And instead of applying it, or maybe I should say, in addition to being able to apply engineering in that context, I got really excited about applying engineering and that process to more biologically relevant questions, more questions that affected my family members, that affected friends of mine. And so that is really the piece that drew me in into trying to get closer to cancer research with the tool set and the skills and the love for mathematical modeling that I came along with. And so the field that I'm in is mathematical oncology, right? We're trying to better understand cancer using mathematical and computational analyses. And the reason I like it so much is that it allows us to answer questions that we can sort of go through and iterate through before we connect with an experimental researcher or a clinical trialist, right? We can try to answer questions like turning on or off a reaction, changing a parameter value inside of a computer in less time with fewer resources than it would take to do mouse studies or to do studies in human patients. But of course, right, we need to connect, and I have collaborators in our projects too, because we have to make sure that the model is representing what's actually happening in patients. And so the way that I came into it is just, again, my love for math, love for numbers, but wanting to apply it in a very important and impactful research area.
I love that. It's community and connections that really bringing you kind of into it there. And I think there's something so striking when you have sort of that kind of passion behind it. It sort of makes the work not even better for you, but more impactful, I think, in the long run. So that's really so amazing. But as we all know, there's always challenges. And I feel for any woman in any field, but definitely in y'all's field, the way we would say in Texas, where I grew up, it's there. So I'm going to ask you a question that's a little loaded, but in a way, it's like, try to pick one. But, what is like the hardest challenge that you've had to face, or the biggest challenge that you face as a researcher, if you can choose one? And how do you feel you either learned from that and overcame it? And I'm going to go backwards this time. Dr. Finley, can you start with this one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, related to research, one challenge is getting enough data that we can use to build a realistic mathematical model. On the personal side, a challenge is walking, into a scientific conference and seeing mostly males, or seeing very few people of color, right? And so intersectionality is very important, right? Being a woman and a woman of color. And that comes with it, a lot of difficulties and barriers, to be quite honest. And so just not having so many role models and mentors that I can look up to see, what's possible for my career trajectory. And so that, on top of, the very important research questions that we're trying to address, those are the biggest challenges, I would say.
Dr. Madina Kuwait?
Well, okay, so I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I would have to say that, as I had mentioned to you, growing up, being sort of the artist type, I was also the kind of the nerdy type. And I tended to hang around people where we were always sort of square pegs that never fit into round holes. And so, it has been easy for me to be a loner. And one of the hardest things for me has been to be able to use the idea of a team. You mentioned something earlier, Lolita, about being a part of sports teams. I so envy that, because I really didn't grow up with that a whole lot. And I've had to learn how to be a part of a team. And in science, in research these days, you need a team. You need to be able to be a part of one, to lead one. And so it's actually been a learning curve for me. I think one of the reasons is because, I had always been kind of embarrassed to share some of my crazy ideas, thinking that, people would, I don't know, if they think I'm, it's a little wacky or something like that. And I've learned that in this field, you don't share your crazy ideas, you don't get funded. So it makes a big difference to really engage people and bring them on and share your passion with them. And I'm less afraid of that now. It's essential part of my research. So I would have to say, that's been something that this field has actually helped me overcome.
I so appreciate that in both, and respect that, because I think one of the things, even when I was going through my cancer journey, like I've always been type A, in control of everything. And I had no idea how to ask for help from anyone. And like the thing I needed the most was assistance. I needed help. And I remember my doctors, all of them, all three women were like, don't be afraid to do that. Like that type of fear that doesn't show weakness. It's actually a lot of strength, and you're going to be empowered when you come together. And it was really hard for me. So I totally appreciate and respect what you're saying. And I think that's a wonderful thing that this kind of research, or this path, could lead you to learning more about that and doing that more often. Dr. Basha, do you have the challenge that sort of got you, and how do you feel you've overcome that or learned from that?
Yeah, I'll speak to something that's pertinent to all the young budding researchers that are listening. I think one of the hardest challenges about entering the field of academia is identifying the right mentors. I think it shapes so much what trajectory your career is going to take. And it's really challenging to identify those right people that are not only going to mentor you in your career, but also advocate for you as you build your career and really be those lifelong advocates and supporters for you. And as you walk in, there's so many sort of different options of people you come into contact with, but to build that relationship was daunting. I mean, I trained at a large center. There were several different researchers that were at the top of their field, and coming across these people and having the courage to talk to them about research and interest and build a relationship with them was daunting. But I can't highlight how grateful I am for those people that took time out of their career, mostly women, who took time out of their career to really help me build mine and to advocate for me in different realms, things that I didn't even think about, things pertinent to my social life, to my career, to my growth all around as a person. And I always have to keep those people in mind as I go along and think about the things that they've done so I can pay it forward. But it's such an essential part of a career in academia.
Oh my gosh, you all really touched on some wonderful things there. And I really think if you're out there and you're learning, and even like, if you're my age or any age, like that's one of the things, if you're trying to learn or gather, there's, send that email, call somebody, do your research, find someone, because we were all in that space. It's at that point in time, we were all starting. And I think, we've learned, through our experience that, we can only do so much by helping each other, kind of passing it and paying it forward as you're talking about. So yeah, looking for mentoring, like really sticking in that zone, and you having them as part of your journey really is important. It's so amazing. I know, but at the end of the day, right, we're, I think you all touched on it a little bit in some points of this conversation, but it's about funding. It's about getting the money to be able to deal with those wacky ideas that you talk about, Dr. Madina Kuwait. So why don't we start with yourself? And this question is for yourself and Dr. Finley. Being funded by, in the past or currently by the American Cancer Society, what does that mean? Dr. Finley, why don't we start with you since you're currently being funded?
Oh, wow. It brings back such memories. I received my first funding when I was very early in my career, starting off as a faculty member, senior postdoc, right on that edge. But I have to tell you, it occurred in one of the most difficult and saddest times of my life. I had applied for funding, and not too long after that, I lost my dad very suddenly and very tragically and very unexpectedly. He was someone who was a real artistic and cultural patriarch of our family and the Hawaiian community in Los Angeles. And so, going through that grieving period, I kind of lost interest. And when I returned back to the lab, I got this notice that I received some funding. It was through an institutional research grant from the American Cancer Society. And they liked what I proposed. And it just reminded me, I have something to aim for. I have a reason to carry on with this work and to keep it going. And just real quick, because the American Cancer Society did even more for me, even though I didn't get direct funding from them, the reviewers of the ACS really propelled me. And even though I could just never get that bigger funding from them, the reviews that I got back encouraged me to go apply for an NIH grant. I thought that was something you do as a senior, well-established investigator. That wasn't for me just starting off in the field, but they told me, the program director told me, you want to apply for NIH funding. If you did, based on the scores the ACS gave you, you'd be funded by now. So I did, and my first time around, I got funded. So I have the ACS to thank for that, and
Wow.
It's ever since. It's everyone here can tell you it's competitive, but this is what is helpful. So sorry to go on so long.
No,
but,
and
that's what
I
means.
love that. But I love the fact that, like, it was supposed to be one thing and then it became another, and like you continued on with it, and it all started with this one seed planted and like someone talking to you. Such an important conversation that someone had with you, and look what it got you. So that's amazing. And Dr. Finley, you're being funded. Just tell us a little bit about that if you can quickly, and what does that mean for you and your research?
Yeah, I mean, having the support to and ask the kind of questions that we're interested in that are potentially impactful for patients, and to also have fun while doing it. I mean, it propels your career forward. The ACS Research Scholar Grant was one of the first external funding sources awards that I was selected for. And so just like what Dr. Madina Kuwait said, right, it launches your career. And I agree, absolutely, the reviews that we got back. So I have to say, you can apply for this particular funding mechanism 3 times. I didn't get it first, second, or third time. Wow. I was right on the cusp, right? It like gets good, excellent, outstanding. And it's like, outstanding, I made it, but not quite. But my program officer was very supportive, and he said very much the same thing, like apply for R01. And as I was putting that together, he called back and said, we found additional funds for you, right? And so that literally made my day. It literally helped me to get to the next step in my career. And without ACS funding, right, I wouldn't be able to do the modeling that we're doing, to mentor the students that I enjoy talking with and telling them about, what their career options are. It's just, it opens so many doors. And more importantly, it allows us to get closer to the kinds of answers that patients need every day.
I love that it's not, it wasn't so easy for everyone, because I think sometimes people think once they see you where you are, that they're like, oh, this is so, it was like this and like that. And brilliant. I just got this thing, and it wasn't. And it never is, right? But it's lovely to hear from you, who are such amazing professional, like you're outstanding at what you do already, that, you face these challenges and maybe some in the future, but by getting through it, things will happen. We're going to get a little bit of a lightning round. This is my last question for you before we get to the audience. And I really want to get to any questions that folks have out there for you, since they've been listening to all of this. So we could do this quickly in like a little bit of a, like, you've got 30 seconds on channel 4 to put this out there. The advice you would give to young women who want to be just like you, a researcher. Dr. Basho, why don't we start with you? Oh, you're on mute, my dear.
So sorry, there was some background noise. So
no, I love it. I love it. I get to do that at least once in a Zoom.
Yes, of course, as we've all learned. I would really just say you've got to stick with it. I mean, I think you've heard that throughout this sort of session from us in various contexts, but there are challenges along the way, whether it be with funding, whether it be with finding the right collaborators, or advocating for your ideas, or whatever it might be. But a lot of times, as you heard from Dr. Finley, it takes multiple applications to get people to understand why your research is important and why you're so passionate about it. A lot of times people just don't recognize that on the first go. And honestly, that process, that feedback helps you make it better. And so just stick with it, and it will pan out.
Dr. Madina Kuwait?
Well, I would say that over the years, I've probably accumulated and mentored maybe about, 2 or 3 dozen or so trainees. And I keep hearing the same thing over and over again from many of them, is that many of them get a little bit obsessed and distracted with what's happening to other people, and wondering, why is it not happening for me? And I keep having to tell them, yeah, you don't know what's going on in their lives. You're not on their journey, and they're not on yours. So they don't know what it's like to be in your shoes either. So it's good to stay aware, but don't stay overly focused on that. Just keep on your journey and stay on your trajectory. And then along those lines, I always try to remind myself and others not to take myself seriously, but to take my research seriously. And then finally, the other thing that I often find myself having to say to myself and others is, to try to surround yourself with people who also believe in your vision, but can also offer you critical feedback. It's helpful for your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So make sure you remember that it is your journey. Don't think about others, and surround yourself with people that believe in you. I love that. Dr. Finley.
Yes, I think one piece of advice I would have that I also try to follow myself is to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So you might be in a space that, you know, societal norms or cultural norms or what's around us might say that you're not meant to be there. But you can stand out, you can shine brightly in those situations, and you can use your creativity and your drive and your determination to really make a difference. And so stepping outside of your comfort zone can really push you into places where you have greater impact, greater visibility, and you get to do, again, things that you enjoy and love and are passionate about.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, always the idea that I always grew up with the idea that like people are going to tell you no, or that you're not right for something. You say, I think I am, and pushing forward in what you do, because that's really what matters. It's what you do, not what people think you should be. So I love that so much. And we did get a question from the audience. I'm reading it now, and I think I'll give it to all of you guys, but if we can make the answers short, that will help hopefully get either more questions or stay within our time. What do you foresee breast cancer treatment to look like in 10 years? I love this question because I mean, like if this is good now, and in the 8 years that I had my first diagnosis, it's gotten so much better. Where are we going to be in 10 years? Dr. Baisha, why don't we start with you?
Well, I think we're going to be curing it, and we can all retire.
Nice.
Yes.
No, I think it's so hard to imagine what will happen in 10 years, but I think our drugs are going to continue to get better and better and less toxic to a point where there's going to be a lot of cancers where women have very minimal treatment, and we're able to get really, really good long-term outcomes. I think there's still going to be those cancers that have those unexpected traits and are really high risk. And we're going to continue to work to deep dive into those and find smaller subsets of those cancers, so where we can develop new targeted treatments and make headway. And so I think we're going to continue to see some of the same, but on a much higher scale in the years.
Dr. Finley, what do you think? 10 years?
I think it's going to be a combination of continuing to target actual cancer cells, tumor cells, as well as the microenvironment, the local neighborhood that cancer cells are residing in. And it's happening now, but I think we're going to be able to double down on those ideas and target both the environment and the tumor itself, the tumor cells. And
Dr. Madina Kuwait, take it away.
Well, I envision a clinic of the future in 10 years. And I think it's, we're partially on that path. So right now, the way that we have it is, you can get imaged, you can detect tumors earlier and earlier, and then get a diagnosis and receive a treatment. But I think that many of us are trying to aim towards a future where we can not only detect early, but during the detection, do the diagnosis and the treatment at the same time. And so that's the big, that's the wild dream that would be really fantastic. And I think, as Dr. Basho said, make breast cancer something that we could really retire early from.
All I'm going to say is, y'all dream big. I love dreaming big because I know that you're going to make it a reality. I think you are the most amazing women. I'm so at a loss of words, which doesn't happen if anyone knows me. Just what you're doing is so impactful as a person who has benefited from the change in drugs, the things to make my body still be able to play volleyball every Saturday and do all of the things that I do. And I work through my entire treatment and recovery. It was because of what you do that made my life better. So thank you so very much. Dr. Baisha, Dr. Finley, Dr. Madina Kuwait, I just can't thank you enough for everything you do. I am so inspired by everything. And I know everyone that's out there is as well. And, in order to keep these things going, there needs to be more funding. We need to fund more research projects like this. And as you saw, Ms. Kelsey Davis is back on here. And part of that is getting involved in ResearchHERS. So she's going to take it away now to talk a little bit more about the ResearchHERS campaign and how you can get involved. Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Lolita, and thank you to our amazing researchers. What a great panel discussion. I know we've gone a little bit over, but we didn't want to end the discussion. We've learned so much today, and we're so privileged to have this group of amazing women with us today. So as we all know, cancer research doesn't begin and end in a lab or over a set of data. It's all focused on helping everyone avoid or survive cancer. Your support through fundraising can make all the difference. The next great cancer discovery could be sitting on a shelf as a grant application right now. During the past few years, we've seen hundreds of women who have signed on as ambassadors from various industries, including business, biotech, academia, the medical and healthcare field, and even college and high school students. Currently, our 2021 Los Angeles campaign is represented by a diverse group of strong female leaders. Our ambassadors are passionate about women-led cancer research and have joined the movement to raise awareness and critical funds for the American Cancer Society. One of our ambassadors, Caitlyn Carmichael, is using her platform as an actress, philanthropist, and a student at UCLA to raise funds for her campaign. ResearchHERS, and specifically breast cancer research, was important to Caitlyn because when she was 10 years old, her mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her mom is a fighter, and she remained grounded in her faith during her journey. Now 6 years in remission, she uses her story to be a friend and an ally to women in the same situation as she was. Like her mom, Caitlyn is choosing to use her platform to spread awareness on breast cancer, early detection, and the importance of a healthy lifestyle. I would like to share with you a short video created by Caitlyn about her story and the importance of early detection.
Hi, I'm Caitlyn Carmichael, and my mom is a breast cancer survivor, so we know how important it is for cancer screenings to be a normal part of our lives. Research shows that cancer screening can detect changes before cancer occurs or catch cancer early when it may be easier to treat. If you have a cervix, you should begin screening around age 25. Around age 45, you should begin colon and breast screenings, and at age 50, you should discuss lung screening with your doctor. Many of these tests are free or covered by insurance. Keep yourself and your loved ones safe by visiting cancer.org/get-screened.
Thank you, Caitlyn, for taking the time to record that message. In addition to Caitlyn Carmichael, I would also like to recognize our other current ambassadors, Carolyn Ree, Diana Jamal, Navar Moradian, Pilot Paisley Rose, Aliyah Manetta, Nikki Mohajer, and Cynthia Begay. They are all leaders in their communities who share our passion to fuel the future of cancer research. We have a strong team, but we're looking for more to join us in the fight against cancer. There are many ways to get involved. You can donate to ResearchHERS, nominate a powerful candidate, or join as an ambassador and take on the challenge yourself to fund research that can save lives. If you or someone you know is interested in becoming a ResearchHERS ambassador, please visit our website at acsresearchers.org. Visit our website for all the information and to make a donation. Please show your support by making a donation of any size to the Los Angeles ResearchHERS campaign. All dollars raised will go to fund women-led cancer research. Cancer hasn't stopped, and neither will we. With your help, we can sustain support of the best and brightest cancer research led by women. And I'll turn it back over to Lolita. Thank you.
Kelsey, thank you so much. I love seeing so many young faces being so proactive, even as early as they are starting this journey to helping, find a cure, being research and just doing research and just being a part of this movement, because that's what it really is. Like, we as women create such great momentum. We do so much. We're like the octopuses in our home and in our lives. And, with each other, we can really do more and really support each other. So I love everything that I'm seeing there. So thank you so much for showing us all of that. On your screen here, I want to give you a couple of little things. First of all, thank you so much to our gold sponsor, Cedars-Sinai, and our panelists, the researchers, the amazing superwomen, Dr. Basho, Dr. Madina Kuwait, and Dr. Finley. A special thanks to our survivor speaker, Rebecca Dabbs, who is also not just sharing her inspiration, but she is working towards that cure as well. As you see here, this is, we have one more final speaker series, concluding the conversations in and out of the lab. The next and final discussion of
definitely
2020.
Lolita, you muted yourself.
I'm not sure how that happened, but here I am again. We have one more conversations in and out of the lab. The next and final discussion of the 2021 campaign is going to be held November 18th. Put that on your calendar. That's at 1 p.m. and it's going to focus on cancer prevention. In addition to the doctors from Cedars-Sinai, the event will feature speakers from ACS-funded researchers, volunteers, and current campaign ambassadors. So again, we really hope to see you as part of that conversation in November. And if I was muted during my thank you Cedars-Sinai for being a gold sponsor. Woo, woo, woo. And thank you to our panelists. You are super women. You are amazing. You are real. You are creative. You are, you do math. The world is really such a greater place because of what you do. And thank you for not only doing what you do, but also inspiring others and mentoring others to do more. And all the young women out there, please know that these are women that are, paving a path and a journey, but you have your own journey, and please also be part of it, because with your help, we can really one day find a cure and get these ladies into retirement early, shall we? Thank you again so much. NBC4 has been a longtime sponsor of the American Cancer Society here in Los Angeles, helping raise awareness. I'm going to be emceeing, I think it's my 8th Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk on October 16th. So come out there in downtown LA if you're there. And if you're interested more about ResearcHERS or want to get involved, reach out to the local American Cancer Society staff partners who will be emailing you after the event. So check that email. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.